Hi there, Gary.
Hi, Kissy.
Hi, good to see you. How are
Likewise.
things?
Things are going well. Really great
Fantastic.
to be on this call with you.
No, thank you. Honestly, it's a real privilege. I've been wanting to have this conversation for quite some time. I think ever since I got an email from Rosemary Goodell, who's very kindly reached out to say that you are writing this book, The Worth of Water, with Matt Damon, and would I be interested in having a read through the manuscript? And so, obviously, I definitely said, I'd love to. Um, and with the work that we do, I'm always reading, always researching. There's all kinds of literature that I engage with, but it's not always the case that in reading insight about macro developments and so forth, that I always get a sense of the personal story. And something that really came out very strongly from the book was the way in which you and Matt were able to really tell a very important story about water and the access of it and the need of it. It's simple, but it was also quite complex in some ways. But then how you're able to intertwine that with your own personal journeys, I thought is brilliant, honestly. So I would love for us to maybe take it back to the start, how it all began. And maybe I'll start with a quote that I draw from what you said, Gary, which I think goes back to your childhood and your upbringing. And the quotation is, "Unless a life is lived for others, it's not worth living."
Hmm.
So in the context of that and your journey, could you just maybe share your reflections on how it all started and what this quotation means to you?
Yeah, I've always loved that quote. And I think to me that there is something in all of us that wants to give and to share. And whether that is in your work, or whether it's kind of in your personal life, or whether it's, with your children, all of us live our lives for our children, right? And our communities in many cases. And so to me, that's just kind of bedrock of what our society should be. If everybody is thinking about the other as they live their lives, then everybody is going to be better off. And that certainly I saw in my parents, and especially my mom, growing up, how she did live her life for us children, but she also led it for her wider community, particularly through our church and service to others. Over the course of my childhood, seeing that certainly inspired me along the lines to do the work that I've done with water.org and water equity.
And so, talking about water.org and water equity, could you give a bit of an overview as to what they are and what you're seeking to achieve?
Sure. Water.org is a water NGO, but it's really more of a water finance NGO. And kind of what distinguishes us from others who are kind of working on this issue, this global water supply crisis, is trying to use access to finance for people living in poverty so that they can get the water and sanitation solutions that they feel best meet their needs. And so it's really about trying to kind of understand water poverty that people face around the world and the nature of that. And that's, having done this work for so long, I've learned from so many women around the world what water poverty means for them and how they solve their water crisis. And in meeting so many of these women around the world, recognizing that they were already paying huge amounts of their time and their sometimes money to be able to meet their daily water needs. The time spent queuing in lines at a public stand post that may or may not have water, that's the time that they could have spent working at a paying job, right? Or caring for their family. Or if they're in an urban slum, paying these water vendors from the tanker trucks for water that maybe costs 15 times more than if they had a connection to the public utility. Meeting a woman in India who was paying a loan shark, 125% interest on a loan for a toilet. So we recognize that we don't have to solve all of this through charity, because the problem kind of contains its own solution. If you could get these women access to affordable loans, they could then actually get the water and sanitation that they needed and repay the loans and be much better off. And so that's what we set about doing with water.org. And now, we've worked with more than 150 financial partners around the world to start making loans, to get them to start making loans for water and toilets, which they weren't doing before because they didn't see it as an income generating activity. So it took a little while to encourage them to make these loans. But now, more than 54 million people have availed themselves of loans through our partner network to improve their water and sanitation solutions. And then where we came in with water equity was recognizing that these financial institutions, if they had more, call it wholesale capital to expand these programs, they could reach even more people. So we started up Water Equity as a social impact asset manager that now makes loans to some of these financial institutions so that they can scale up these portfolios. So we might loan an MFI, microfinance institution, $7 million for 3 years, and they'll break that into literally millions of small loans over that course of time, and they'll repay Water Equity, and then we repay investors. So we're basically kind of creating this financial plumbing between a woman who makes a few dollars a day and the capital markets, where there's a lot more money that we can mobilize versus just relying on charity alone.
And that's obviously a much more sustainable model, whereby the financiers see the financial return, as opposed to donations, which it also serves a purpose, but it's not always a steady stream. So going back to that point about social impact and sustainability, and also being able to convey the messaging, the realities rather. You talk about the iconic woman on the continent who is using her precious time to walk for miles to get water. How much of a leap has it been in being able to convey that image and that reality for so many women to, say, a Western audience, whereby the concept of being without water is so foreign?
Yeah, it is definitely a challenge, and this has kind of been what I've been trying to do from the start. When we started, this is back in 1990 when I first started this type of work, and trying to find ways to convey that. Photos and slides that I would take when I was traveling helped a little bit, but then bringing the personal stories back. Initially, what we would do is these small fundraising dinners where people would, could gather 100 or 200 people and just, tell the story as best we could with pictures and words. Now we do that, in any way possible. Sometimes it's through media, where, we're fortunate to get some media attention because of the work and because of Matt, being the co-founder. But then we thought, we still weren't breaking through. So we tried lots of different things. And the most recent one, obviously, was the book, trying to really be very thoughtful about the reader and the context and, what we knew, and trying to convey it in a way that, like you said, it is a personal journey for us. And it is our story in a sense. But our aim was to really make it convey the story of the women around the world who this, just is such a horrific crisis for. And the book format, I think, allowed us to do that and to get incrementally better at it. But it is, unless you're there, living where you do and the experiences growing up, it's just difficult without actually being there and living that experience. But we tried to do the best we could.
No, you did an amazing job. I remember when I'm normally based in Accra, as you know, and at the time when I was reading the manuscript, I was there, and at a particular point in time, there was no water. And I remember thinking, gosh, this is, the reality for so many people across the world, day in, day out. And I remember thinking, you know, how are you able to make this reality? How can it become palpable to those who, you know, you just switch on your tap and it's there, or you know, you go into Starbucks and you get a free drink of water, whatever. So I also asked myself how much the extent of the research that you and Matt did in terms of, you know, just walking the journey of women, young girls, you know, the people, communities that are without water. How much time did you spend on the ground in places like Guatemala, Southeast Asia, Africa, to really, you know, experience it alongside the communities that you're seeking to support?
Yeah, that's a great question, because that is kind of what anchors us in this work to this day. And both Matt and I had really kind of intense experiences of that when we first discovered this issue, right? And I think, you know, I was in Guatemala the first time I experienced it when I was still, you know, an undergraduate in university, and being able to see how, you know, this one young girl, she was probably about 6 years old or so, was collecting water from these, you know, contaminated barrels of water and carrying it back home through these muddy kind of sewage filled streets. You know, that was my, you know, no matter how much I'd read about the water problems around the world, until I went and experienced that, nothing struck me in that way, and struck me such a way that it inspired me to kind of do the work I do. And then, you know, continually then having every opportunity to kind of meet with people who are experiencing this, but then also meet with local partners who are working to address it, and seeing how they were solving it and trying to get behind them. And to this day, you know, I am still in those households, meeting with those individuals who benefit, and those partners. And Matt's the same way. You know, Matt, you know, in Zambia experienced this community water system, and the impact that it had on people's lives there, and that really shaped him as well. And then, you know, since then, you know, we've traveled together to, you know, to India, to South Africa, to, you know, Indonesia, to Philippines. You know, Matt and I have been to all of those places together. So he has invested a lot of time himself in trying to understand this crisis at a human level, so he can get even better at conveying it, you know, through, you know, he's a natural storyteller, so he does much better. He's, you know, he was just telling a story about, you know, a girl he met in Haiti, you know, not too long ago, and how powerful that was. So, yeah, we clearly continue to be motivated by those encounters that we have with people and the human element of it.
Wonderful. No, definitely. I mean, in the book, I think Matt talks about how he's more, you know, used to telling stories in front of the camera as opposed to, you know, in writing. But definitely the storytelling comes out really strongly from both of you. Another thing I really enjoyed reading and learning about was your families and the importance of, you know, the upbringings you both had, your mothers, you know, the fact that, well, for Matt, I remember him saying in the book that, you know, his mother was a lecturer, a teacher, and was also quite an activist. And it was really refreshing to hear the sense of purpose, wanting to give back and mobilize, do something, but also doing it from a place of humility, not going in and assuming that you know it all and that you're here to, you know, make this intervention without a joined up approach with the communities that you're seeking to serve. So how important is it for yourselves and also for others that want to reach out and have an urge to help, to support, to be of service? How important is it to do it in community, in conjunction with the very people that you're seeking to support?
Yeah, no, and that is, I think, one of the biggest challenges in, you know, trying to help someone else, right? What is help? I think we all feel a sense of empathy, and certainly I do, for people who experience this crisis. But I discovered, early on, that it wasn't going to be about me going and drilling wells around the world, despite the fact that I have 3 engineering degrees. You would think I would be focused on that, because I'd seen too many projects fail because of, the Westerners coming in and saying, this is how you supply water. And, the community is just kind of along for the ride, as opposed to being at the center of it. So certainly, that early experience to see things that had gone wrong led me initially to focus on, before there was a water.org, there was Water Partners. Back in 1990, I co-founded Water Partners, and the name kind of says it all. We had a new paradigm. We were only going to work with local partner organizations, local teams who were closest to the communities. And what we were about was just looking to find and seek out the best partners, and then get them the financing that they needed to be able to do these community-based water projects. And so from the outset, it was always about, local nationals of the countries where we work taking the lead in this, and us just providing some support. And, we have to have some oversight, so we would evaluate the outcomes of projects so that we could make sure that we were being good stewards of donor resources, and we still continue to this day to do that. But it is very challenging, for a Westerner, someone from the North wanting to help, people in the South. You have to really think hard about what is help and how you do that. I don't think people should shy away from leaning into, development work and being able to give back if they feel called to work in that way. But it can be a challenging thing to know what is a good and helpful role, and what might devolve into paternalism or other traps.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. And I want to touch upon a word you just mentioned, which is calling. And I guess a reason why one might want to help, or to feel that this is something to really get involved in, it goes beyond just because it's difficult. It's not simple to fundraise, to be on it day in, day out, to sell the story, to be researching. I'm sure there have been so many setbacks, and as you said, you've seen failure firsthand, but you've kept on going. So I'm curious to understand that thing, the drive, what has kept you going, and is it a sense that this is a calling, this is your life's work, or is it something else?
I think it's a combination. It is a calling for me, and I feel like that's why I'm here, on this planet, is to work to solve this issue. So certainly I feel, deep down, that drive. But I also, the engineer entrepreneur in me also gets a lot of satisfaction out of solving difficult problems. And this is one of the planet's most difficult problems. And to me, I know that we can do this. I believe that everybody in the world can have access to water and sanitation. Obviously we can. We don't have to invent a miracle cure. We just have to kind of puzzle it out. Like, how do you put the economics and the politics and the engineering and everything together in a way with people at the center so that it can actually work? I mean, we have safe water in much of the world, right? We have sanitation in much of the world. There's no reason why it can't happen everywhere in the world. And to me, that is a driver in this as well. So how are we going to innovate our way out of this? And to me, that is the essence of water.org and water equity, is that we aren't just out, building widgets, and in our case, drilling one more well. What we're out there is trying to nudge all of these systems. I think that's the key to this. It's not like we're going to go and like create something, the world's biggest water NGO that goes out and gets everybody water. We're going to take all these things that are part of the system and kind of nudge them a little bit to get them to align more with the needs of people living in poverty. And that's what we did with microfinance. We just kind of nudged it a little bit. It existed, but it wasn't lending for water and toilets. So we just kind of nudged it that way. And now, $4 billion in these loans have happened for poor households around the world. Investors, in fact, investing, we just kind of are nudging it towards water and sanitation. And now Water Equity has $350 million of committed capital that we're deploying around the world to scale things up. And so capital, we live in this world of capitalism, but we need capitalism with a conscience as well. And so we don't shy away from turning capitalism in the way that we believe it is most helpful. We don't like curse capitalism and say that's not going to work, but we nudge it in a way that things tilt a little bit more in favor of the poor so that they can get the solutions that they feel are best for them.
Yeah. Thank you, Gary. I mean, I'm glad you're talking about the numbers because there is a quote from the book which says that at the time of writing, he said that today's best estimates say that solving the water crisis would take $114 billion a year across 10 years. And that currently the total development assistance going to water and sanitation is just over $14 billion a year. So there's quite a huge shortfall. And looking at those figures, do you ever feel that this is a really Herculean task, and are we ever going to make it?
I think we will make it. I think, again, it's not going to be water.org or Water Equity working on its own to be able to do this. But think about, before we had this initiative that we call Water Credit, which is, looking at lending small loans for water and sanitation versus giving, water projects to people. No one really ever believed that you could make a loan to someone for water and sanitation and get it repaid. The assumption was that everyone was equally poor and that they all needed charity. Well, we've moved, to the point where, $4 billion in these loans have happened. And that's capital that would have never come in with just pure philanthropy. So that gives you some hope. It's like, oh, so maybe there is a different way other than charity. And then we said, well, what if we could go and give, competitive financial returns to investors? Could we do that in a way that would allow more of these loans to take place? And, now that's been since 2017 that we've had Water Equity that's going out and raising that capital to put it in. So that has the potential to be billions more capital coming in. But what about all the other people who have capital to invest? That they can go invest in the stock market, they can invest in private equity, but they can look at us now and say, wait, somebody has shined a light on a path where we can invest and get a competitive financial return and millions of people can get water. That's what we're banking on, that we're illuminating this path for other capital providers, not just all of our investors. And my hope is that huge wall of whether it's, green capital with the environment, which we're attracting a lot as well, or blue investment with people who want to impact water, but they needed a return. If we can get all of that capital coming in too, then this is going to be a much more manageable problem. But we also know that there are people in extreme poverty who will not be able to avail themselves of a loan, but that's where government and subsidies still need to happen, right? But if you can, help hundreds of millions of people through access to finance, that makes the people in extreme poverty a much more solvable problem for government to target subsidies to where they're needed the most. So that's kind of what we see as the big vision for how all these pieces can fit together. That's not just us, but it's us nudging all these different things that give us hope that everybody can enjoy and thrive because they have safe water and a clean toilet.
And Gary, to sort of wind us up. It's been wonderful sharing and hearing more. For those who haven't read the book, of course, I definitely recommend it. It's a brilliant read. But what would you say for the average person who is, living their lives normally, living in the West, doing their thing, coming, going, thinking about the daily grind? How best can they engage, would you say? What can they be doing to make a difference with God's water? Yeah.
I think just experiencing or summoning gratitude every time that they turn the tap or wake up in the morning and make their coffee with the water or flush their toilet, that's where it starts. Just reflecting on that, meditating on that, to like get that connection, which I think makes everybody more empathetic, and then to take action. Not everybody can go and start their own NGO or move to a country and start working at the community level, but frankly, we need philanthropic capital. So even small donations online help a lot to kind of fuel this type of effort and this innovation. That's a big part of it. And it doesn't have to be us. I mean, there's lots of organizations out there that people can give to that support water issues around the world. And it takes a village of NGOs to get this crisis solved. And then also, for individuals who have more resources, accredited investors, they have the ability to invest in water equity as well. And we have lots of corporate partners. So anybody out there who are working in corporations who are, managing assets, our most recent funds have investors like Starbucks and Ecolab and Reckitt and many other corporations that are coming in and doing this as well. So people in those seats of power and influence can reach out to us as well to see how we can partner with them.
Okay, wonderful. It's definitely a joined up approach. And just before we press pause, Gary, I mean, what does a day in the life of Gary look like? I mean, you're doing so much, and you're often traveling and so forth. But what is there a typical day?
Yeah, there are some typical days, but there's far more atypical days. If that's not an oxymoron, I don't know. But no, I really I'd like to focus on one, continuing to be visiting with people who we seek to serve, to help, and get around the world to do that, and meeting with our team. So I spend a fair amount of time doing that, but I also spend a fair amount of time pitching. I love to pitch. I feel like we have like a really innovative organization, and it's very effective and efficient and forward-looking. And so I love to pitch to new investors and new donors. So I do a lot of that, and I love doing this. Telling the story, and particularly with Matt, reaching out and connecting with people through media and the storytelling. So I do that, and then you may suspect I kind of consider myself as the chief innovation officer of water.org. That doesn't mean I do everything, but I like to challenge the rest of the team to be a part of the innovation team as well, and find new solutions. And that's kind of what some of my days look like.
Okay. I hope you get to fit in some rest time in the midst of all of that as well. Yeah.
For sure.
Gary, it's been really wonderful speaking and sharing. Thank you so much. And I really look forward to seeing more of what water.org is going to do more to equity. So I wish you all the very best.
Thank you, Kissy. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.